So let's get into the distinction between masculinity and femininity in business and how you can tap into this understanding to create more grace and more ease and flow in your business. The business world was created by men for men, which meant that until really recently, when we women wanted to enter the workplace, enter the business world, we had to adopt a very masculine approach. And what we're seeing, especially really recently, is that there's a new trend. There's a new way of doing things, which is with women adopting and bringing more of that feminine energy to the workplace. Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like and how you can tap into this awareness of masculine and feminine energy in business. So if we think about masculine versus feminine, on the masculine side, we'll see that the masculine over the last 10,000 years or so has really come from a place of owning things, right? So ownership was really important. Owning land, owning property, owning equipment, all this ownership was very much, it's a very masculine approach to business. Now, on the flip side of that, a more feminine approach is this concept of sharing or even of access. And we're already starting to see, and I talked about this in a podcast episode with Nani Leah Diamond, we're seeing how the move is going from ownership to access and sharing. Just think about Uber or Lyft or Airbnb, right? These business models, Uber is the biggest car service or taxi service in the world, and Uber doesn't own any cars. Airbnb is the largest hotel offering service in the world, and Airbnb doesn't own any hotel rooms, right? So we're already seeing this shift from masculine to feminine already in the workplace. Another distinction between a more masculine approach versus feminine approach in business is the distinction between hard work and hustle and forcing outcomes and making stuff happen and getting things done versus flow and flexibility and actually attraction. So if you think about this hard work hustle, I got this analogy from Roger James Hamilton, as like chasing butterflies with a net. So imagine having a butterfly net and going around and trying to catch a butterfly, right? With the net, we expend a lot of energy. We're hustling, we're doing a lot of work, and we have to, once we get the butterfly, we need to pin it down and keep it trapped, right? And so that it doesn't get away. Versus this more feminine approach, which would be to build a butterfly garden, to nurture the butterfly garden and attract the butterflies to us so that there's an abundance of butterflies. So that's a distinction there that you can apply to branding. You can apply that to marketing. You can apply that to all sorts of scenarios where in the past we might have taken this more hard work hustle approach. Now we can take a more feminine flow approach. Another distinction between masculinity and femininity in business is the distinction between the mind and the head and the heart. Right? In the more masculine approach is a very logical, rational, planned approach to doing things. And in the more feminine style is a more heart-based, intuition-led approach to business. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that one is better than another. What I'm saying is that in the past, in a more patriarchal structure that we've grown into over the last 10,000 or so years since the dawn of the agricultural revolution, there's been a predominant focus on the masculine approach. And what's happening now, what we're seeing now is the integration and the rise of the feminine to meet the masculine, because together what we can create is much more rich and beautiful and awesome. Another distinction between the more masculine and feminine approach is the distinction between telling and expressing versus receiving and listening. So on the more masculine side, right, think about all the advertising from the last 100 years ago or 50 years ago. It was very much a one-way street, not a dialogue, where the masculine approach was to tell and share and buy advertisements and put out a lot of messaging and penetrate the market. versus now with this rise of the more feminine approach, we're seeing a more of a two-way dialogue with social media. We're seeing where both can speak and listen and speak and listen, and the voice of the one person is being heard much more than ever before. So that's also a masculine versus feminine kind of distinction. Another is the distinction between competition and collaboration. Right? The masculine spirit, the masculine energetic in business tends to be more about competition, about win, lose. I'm going to win this. I'm going to achieve this. I'm going to accomplish this. Versus on the feminine side, it's more like the collaborative approach and co-creation and doing these things together. And so I invite you to think about these things not as like in opposition to each other, but rather how the masculine and feminine can support each other. I like to use the analogy of the masculine as being the container and the feminine being the water. And both of them, when they come together, we can have a full, more integrated experience. So if you want to know more about how to integrate these two different approaches, then feel free to go and download my free guide, Monetize Your Magic Playbook. You can get that by clicking on the link below, opting in, and you'll get that immediately. Enjoy.